Hello and welcome to my building tutorial. Today I will show everyone how to make window stamps and basic buildings from scratch. We will have two phases. The first phase is the most tedious but the most important if you want unique details. Phase 1. Window stamps. I will be creating a simple set of stamps for this tutorial, but you may be as detailed as you like. Important, you must start off with a rather large canvas. I use a 5000 by 2800 canvas, but you can make yours smaller. The first thing I'm going to do is import our references. Our first step is to make a new layer and create a single rectangle. Use the eraser tool to subtract from the rectangle. The stamp must have a transparent background. Duplicate your single window and make a row of 6 windows with even spacing between them. Duplicate your row of windows 10 to 15 times upwards, must keep even spacing. This is just my way of doing it. Merge all your layers that you use to make your pattern of windows. I recommend duplicating this final layer in case you mess up. Before we continue, we will take a look at our windows ref and see that dark rooms have details too. Depending on the type of building, we will see that communal areas such as offices and hallways will take up more than one window. This will cause light to bleed into the next window. Though some windows will be drastically different if the building is a residential building. Each resident has a different style and no light will spill into the next room. Keeping these tips in mind will add more life to your buildings. Transparency lock your window pattern layer and color all the windows a flat dark color of your choice. Next, add some gentle lighting into your first row of windows. Keep in mind that communal buildings will have rows of lights that are on and rows that are off. Offices will take on a few levels at a time. Residential buildings will have more of a scattered set of lights. Next, we will add a row of lit up lights. Try to make these windows look like they have rooms in them. Add abstract details, but try to make it look comprehensible still. Continue this process for at least 2 more rows. The more rows, the better. This is the longest step, but try to have fun with it by imagining some cool scenarios that can happen in these rooms. I like to add parts of my stories into them so that they can feel more unique to me. Finally, once you're done, you will duplicate this layer and clip it to the original layer you duplicated it from. Be sure that there is no transparent spots left in the windows. Move the clip layer around to duplicate them into the other windows. For those who can't clip, you may duplicate your layer and manually lay your already finished windows over your unfinished windows. Just be sure that you keep the spaces between your windows even and empty. Try not to leave any transparent spots in the windows. You can also stretch and flip your windows to make them more unique, but try to keep the details comprehensible. Next, you will make a new layer and also clip it to the original layer from step 9. Set this new layer as an overlay style layer. Add some colors to some of the windows so that the stamp doesn't look so repetitive. Select and merge all clipping layers to the original layer. Duplicate this layer in case you mess up. Shrink, duplicate, and move stamps over to the side. Make sure there is even spacing between the windows. Merge the two stamp layers together and continue to duplicate upwards. Continue to keep even spacing. Merge all your layers again. Put away any extra layers we have saved so that they don't get in the way. Make a new layer and clip it to our new window pattern layer. Next, select a dark color and begin to fill in some rows of windows. Fill in some random windows in the lighter rows as well for a more interesting look. Set this layer as a multiply layer and set the opacity between 60 to 70. I'm just finishing up part 19. Next, use the eraser tool to remove some of the darkness over some lights. Use a soft brush and darken some of the edges of the lit rows of windows. You can flip step 21 and 22. Make a new layer and clip it to the main stamp layer. Set the layer style to hard light or something similar and color in some rooms with their corresponding color. Green light with green room. Make another new layer and clip it to the main stamp layer again. Use a dark color and a detailed brush to go over the windows. I recommend something leafy or solid and detailed. Finally, our stamps are done. Time to export them. Make sure to turn off any background layers and crop out everything except the stamp. Phase 2. The building. Make a new canvas and import your new window stamps. Depending on how large your building will be, you can use the stamps how they are, or if you want a massive building, you duplicate and stack the stamps on and around each other. Merge your stamp layers and duplicate that layer. You will need it later. Next, we will make a new solid black layer and set this as our background. Make another new layer and place down a rectangle. You can make it whatever color you want. Make another layer, and place down another rectangle, but this one will be slimmer. Skew or trim off the rectangle's top so it looks like you have a 3D block. Add a gradient on each face of the building, top being the darkest. You may add some more faces to your building by adding more gradients. Merge your gradients and a rectangle into one layer. This is our building base layer now. Next, we will add our window stamps to one face of the building by using the transform tool. I adjusted the colors to mine, but you don't have to. We will now use the stamp duplicate to place on the other face of the building. Merge both of the stamp layers together and duplicate them once they are merged. Set the top stamp layer to linear dodge add, or something similar. Set the bottom stamp layer to multiply and the opacity to 50. I'm just duplicating my top stamp layer in case I mess up. Go back to your top stamp layer and grab a leafy textured eraser. Begin to erase away rows of windows and any excessive lights. Go back to your building base layer and duplicate it. I already did earlier, but don't fret. Transparency lock this layer and fill it in with a dark color. Set this layer to multiply and the opacity between 80 to 90. Next, make a new layer and clip it to the dark building base layer. Add a glow at the bottom of your building. You can mess around with the layer style and the opacity if you'd like. Make a new layer above the base glow layer and begin to add fine lines outlining the faces of the building. Use an eraser to erase small bits of the lines. This is just for detail. Make a new layer and create a column of horizontal lines. Use a transform tool and place it on one of the faces of the building. Make sure it follows the building's perspective. Next, duplicate this line layer and move the lines just so that they are right under the lighter lines. Transparency lock this layer and color in the lines with a dark color. Now watch me fix these dang lines. Create a new layer and add vertical lines across the windows. This creates visual structure to your windows. Use the eraser tool to erase small bits of these new vertical lines. Create a new layer and clip it to our dark building base layer. Use a detail brush and go over the building. Make it noticeable, but not too overbearing. Set this layer to color dodge or something similar and set the opacity to 40. This part is optional, but I do recommend it. Make a new layer and move it to the top of your layers. Make white lines across your building, or make a unique design. You can go about this next part however you like. You can make a new layer underneath our white lines layer and use a soft brush to add color to our light with whatever color you want. I'll be using the layer style method. Use a softer brush than this. Make a new layer and set it to the top of our layers. Pick a cream color and make dots at the top of your building. These are the aviation obstruction lights. Next, make a new layer underneath our aviation lights layer and add a red glow around our aviation dots. You can merge the two layers at the end if you want. I'm just going to adjust some colors and add my own details real quick. After this, make a new layer between the building base layer and the solid black background. Pick a light color of your choice and use the gradient tool to create haze going upwards. Looking back at our ref, we can see that buildings tend to be darker than the haze around them. This haze is light pollution, or fog. Most buildings will be darker than the haze except for shorter buildings made with lighter material. As we continue, we are going to make a new layer above our haze layer and use a cloudy light brush. This is our smoke fog layer. After we make our smoke fog layer, we're going to go back to our top window stamp layer and duplicate it and set the opacity between 70 to 80. Once we duplicate this layer, we're going to blur it to create a glow around our windows. If your program doesn't have blur, you can use a brush and manually add the glow. Next, we are going to ease up some of the glow from our windows by erasing some of it. It is best to use a cloudy textured eraser, just something soft. You can add more glow to your light by using the same blur method we just used for our windows, or by adding it manually. We're almost done. Make a new layer and move it to the top. Use a cloudy brush again and add fog above your building. Erase and adjust the look of your fog to your desire. Finally all done. So it's been a while since I made a video, but I'm hoping a tutorial on how I make my buildings will suffice. Phase 1 might have been tedious, but the cool thing about your stamps is that you can import them to almost any program and create pretty cool buildings. Just make sure you have a transform tool that can add perspective. Also, I just want to say thank you to all the people who still support me after I've been gone for so long. I was just busy with real life stuff, but I'm hoping to get back in the groove of things. Also, because I already know somebody's gonna ask, yes, I'm still working on Recycled, but I renamed it to Algia, and I rewrote a lot of the story. If you want to see new lore and even my new story, Missing Summit, I have put links to my social medias down in the description. Anyway, thank you so much for sticking around for a bit. Bye! I'm out of breath.